everyone is not a target audience. So our presenter, Jennifer MacArthur, will help us think about how to find a project's true audience and how to engage with that audience and how to get them to share and spread the word about a project. Jennifer is a multi-platform communications, distribution, and engagement strategist whose work focuses on social issue documentary. Her background spans nearly 20 years of working in radio, film, and television, digital media, and publishing. In 2008, she founded Borderline Media, a strategic design company, and they worked on campaigns for the Emmy-nominated Gideon's Army, which premiered in the U.S. documentary competition at Sundance in 2013 and won the Editing Award, and the Emmy-nominated Traces of the Trade. And other clients of Borderline include World Channel, ITVS, and Channel X. And Jennifer has also advised on many other film projects, including Sundance Award winner 3.5 Minutes, which, by the way, is on the short list for an Oscar nod, and the BritDoc Impact Award winner American Promise, which some of you might have heard of. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer MacArthur to enlighten us about where to find our true target audience. Thanks.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So it's been a while since I used to produce webinars all the time back in my former life, years ago, working inside of public broadcasting at the National Center for Media Engagement. I don't know if any of you have ever participated in one of those. Those were pretty great, and we sort of talked about a lot of these same things. So it's fun to get back into doing these kinds of presentations online. So I mean, basically what I'm going to talk about is audience engagement and sort of a 4-step process for audience engagement. And here are the 4 basically. First, identifying who is your audience, what value you can provide to your audience, how do you build that audience, and then how do you connect your content with that audience, right? That seems like it's really simple, really simple 4 things, but essentially because we have a much more complex, complicated world of distribution, so many more channels, cable TV, digital, VOD, all this juicy stuff, movie theaters, non-theatrical, museum screenings, all sorts of things, your phone, and tons more content now than there ever has been. You really have to think through a really careful strategy for connecting your content to the people who want to see it, because you don't want to spend all that money and all that time and all that effort and energy making something and then it not going anywhere. So it's really important to recognize that although there are some this process, this 4-step process is pretty. This is the process. It's still very specific for your piece of content, for your film or your interactive piece or what have you. Just because there is so much content and so many different ways to get it out there. So let's walk through this process a little bit. First, we're going to talk about who is your audience. So to start, I want to kind of dig into a couple of definitions, right? Because I think things get thrown around and people don't actually know what they mean. So as Cassandra said in the beginning, this idea of a general audience, basically, unless you are something like football, Monday Night Football, which has, I don't know, something like 100 million viewers or some crazy thing like that, or Weekly or some huge $200 million budgeted film that has massive marketing dollars behind it. There's no such thing as a general audience, not for folks like us who are independents, right, and who are bootstrapping it. So what you have and what I have, what we have are target audiences, or primary audiences, secondary audiences, niche audiences, and core. And some people might define target primary or core is the same thing, but I make a little bit of a distinction here. Your target audience is basically the audience who you intend to see your film or media. So you're making a film and you have a general sense of who you think is going to be interested in it. That's your target. The secondary audience are the people who exert an influence on the target audience, right? So it could be the kids of your target audience member, the spouse, their associates, their friends, people who they might work with. If it's in the impact space, it might be, if your target audience is a politician or a legislator, the secondary audience would be the voters in their district, right? So the secondary audience is really the people who are influencing your target. A niche audience is a slice of a general audience that's really focused on particular interests. So people who really like food shows or travel shows, or people who are really interested in extreme sports, or there are these niche audiences that have a real particular thing that they like to do, that they have an interest in, sci-fi, fantasy, what have you. So that's a niche. And then your core are your biggest supporters, your biggest fans. They might be the people who it's your mom, right? It's your if she loves you. It's your the people who may have given you some crowdfunding. If you've done a Kickstarter campaign. And sometimes your target audience and your niche audience and your core and your target audience and a niche audience and your core audience can be all the same thing, right? But there are some slight differences. They don't always have to be the same thing. They can be different. When they are the same, that can be really great alignment for you. So let's talk a little bit about how you identify what these groups are. There's something called audience profiling, basically, and that's pretty simple, right? You're looking at people demographically by race or gender, age, sexuality, geographic location, or what they call the life cycle stage. So, somebody who might be married with kids, they might be the audience for one of these very smart, savvy animated films that get made that have, that appeal to kids, but they also have this subtle adult humor that would go over a kid's head, but an adult would enjoy if they had to take their kids to see the movie, right? Not Frozen. I think that's a little too kiddish, but you know what I'm talking about. So that's an example of like targeting to a life cycle stage, or if it's
it's still out there. Carter Edmonds reporting for us at the scene.
Hello.
Carter, thank you. There's 17 people who were injured in one way or another. Many of them shot.
Somebody?
We're told some are lightly wounded.
Oh, okay. I think we're good. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay. No, that's okay. I'm sorry. Oh, demographics. So, if you're making a film, if it's straight out of Compton, you might assume, although I think there's it certainly proved there was crossover, you might assume that there would be a strong black audience for the film Straight Out of Compton. So the demographic piece is pretty self-explanatory. Economics. So you're looking at, this is where it gets a little trickier, right? And some of the economic stuff is actually really geared much more toward products, but I think it also has a real is really important also for film stuff, film and media. So education, occupation, annual income, disposable income, those are sort of like the economic indicators of what class indicators, or the type of a job somebody might have. So it might be debated that a film like American Promise, for example, it could be debated that a film like American Promise might be more appropriate for, you know, middle class or upper class Black parents than it would be for working class Black parents. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe somebody might make that make that argument, because the families in the film are dealing with, you know, they're dealing with implicit bias and you know, problems with achievement gap for their kids that are in these in private school, and people who have their kids in regular public school may or may not feel like the film's for them. Don't know. So that's another example of how you might want to complicate and really think through that slice of audience profiling. Lifestyle, right? So here's an interesting thing. There is something called the 4Cs that was developed by Young and Rubicam, called, and the 4Cs standing for cross-cultural consumer characterization. And it's kind of an interesting way to look at types of people and value systems and how they feel about certain kinds of things, and how they identify with brands. So there are 7 of these categories. The resigned, somebody who seeks survival, and they might be kind of rigid or strict in the way that they think about things. They're oriented to the past. Their brand choices or the things that they might be interested in stress safety or familiarity or the economy. They might even be a little bit older. And another is the struggler. It's somebody who sort of seeks to escape, right? So a person who you know, might be kind of feeling alienated, or they might be disorganized, or challenged because they don't have that many resources, and so they're kind of trying to escape you know, life circumstances and really just sort of enjoy themselves. So they might be focused on just sensation and having a good time. They may drink a lot. They may eat a lot of junk food. They may play lotto. I mean, I know these things sound ridiculous potentially, but this is actually, these profiles have actually been sort of tested and retested and used many times, fairly successfully. Somebody who's sort of mainstream person who seeks security. You know, they're more conventional. They may be more sentimental. They're kind of family-oriented. They care about sort of value for their money, and they tend to be the largest group of people. They're just regular mainstream folks. They seek security. You know, it's just regular kind of middle-class values. Or somebody who's an aspirer who seeks status. They might be a little bit more materialistic. There might be more image conscious. They're more surface, and it's less about the quality of the contents and more about the you know, the hot new thing. The next would be the succeeder, somebody who kind of seeks control. They're goal-oriented. They've got a strong work ethic. They're very confident and organized, and they kind of support the status quo. So they might be attracted to prestige things and reward, stress relief, kind of caring and protective brand identities or stories or ideas like that. And quickly, the last 2, the explorer is interested in discovery. They want to be challenged, new frontiers, adventure. They want to indulge and do exciting new things. They might be the first to try something out, so they might be early adopters. They might be younger. And again, these are like really general sort of assumptions about people. So you know, you have to be a little bit smarter. You can't just make total generalized stereotypes, but these are some broad things to think about. And then the last one is the reformer. People who care about social awareness, independent judgment. They're not materialistic necessarily. They're tolerant of complexity. They're curious. These might be the people who are kind of interested in the impact campaigns, that kind of thing. So those are the 7 sort of characteristics, the lifestyle or values choices that is another way to think about profiling and figuring out what kind of person might be interested in the story that you're telling. And then the last piece is media consumption. So, what do people, who are the kinds of people that read books? Who are the kinds of folks who are watching CBS versus MTV? We know that CBS has an older audience. They tend to be white. They tend to be more conservative. They almost mirror public television in the sense that public television tends to be an older audience, tends to be white, but more liberal. So understanding the habits of the types of people who consume certain kinds of media, the platforms that they're looking at, if they like to read, if they like to listen to music, all those kinds of things help you understand, the profile of the person who you think might be interested in your particular piece of content. So another way to think about this, and an alternative to, and we talked a little bit about the impact piece just a second ago, but an alternative thinking about developing an audience and thinking about who the audience for something is through impact strategy. And this is something that's been bubbling up and has become very important in the documentary film world. And there are quite a few people that do social impact campaigns, myself included. And there are ways to think about who the audience is for your film based around the impact that you're trying to have. Now, they don't always, and lots of people, you can go to panels and panel discussions throughout the film festival circuit where filmmakers and other distributors and social issue strategists like myself are kind of debating the utility of impact strategy and how important it is versus getting your film out to the largest possible audience and making money. Sometimes your strategy for impact, the person that you want to reach or the groups that you want to reach may be very small. You may not need to get it in front of a ton of people to actually make your film have the impact that you want to have. So it's important for you to kind of balance out and understand that impact strategy is slightly more specialized. It does help you understand audience, particularly this idea of who's your target audience and then who's the secondary audience, right? Which I mentioned earlier. Who's the person that you're trying to get to make a decision or to make a change on something, and who is that secondary audience that might put pressure or influence that person to make that decision. So one structure to think through how you would design that process is BritDocs from their Impact Field Guide, the strategic plan worksheet, and that's the link there that helps you map out the messages, the impact goal, then the key agents. That's the piece right there that I think is really where the audience piece falls in. Who can make this happen? Those are the people that you need to reach, basically. And another way to look at this is another group called the Center for Story-Based Strategy. They have a framework called and they call it the Influence Map Worksheet that helps you piece out and think through who is the audience for your particular film or media project, in terms of the impact that you're trying to have. So who are the decision makers? Who are they accountable to? You know, the decision maker would be the target audience. Who are they accountable to would be the secondary audience, right? The people who would influence them. So this is another way, another framework to think about designing, you know, an audience development strategy. So that's the first section of who is your audience. Now thinking through, you know, what value can you provide to your audience? There are a couple of I would say there are four key things that you can provide your audience. See, the first one obviously is content, and that's your film or your piece of media, right? The thing that you make that they want to come see or they want to listen to or you know, get online and interact with. But it also includes, you know, when we say content at all, plus your film, it also includes the secondary or, you know, ancillary content or assets like swag or this website, for example, Gideon at 50. This is a website that we, a secondary website beyond the film's site that we designed that brought together information for people to delve deeper into the issue, to connect with other pieces of content that were related to Gideon versus Wainwright, which was the 50th anniversary of the basically the development of public defense as we know it in the United States. And you know, other information, experts, other media, all these kinds of things that could help people, you know, further understand and inform their understanding about public defense. So it was help give broader context beyond just the film Gideon's Army. This over here, I love these T-shirts. I love Issa Rae. I think she's amazing. The Awkward Black Girl T-shirts. That's another piece of content, essentially, that can go with your film or media. Here's another example up here, and a little fuzzy. Sorry about that. But Almost Sunrise, a film in development that I've been or in post now, will probably be coming out in 2016. This year, the T-shirt, there's a bag and a water bottle, which I love and I take to the gym with me, which has you know, this illustration of the two subjects of the film, Tom Voss and Anthony Anderson, who are in the film, and this is sort of the film's image on, you know, this different swag. So that's content. You could also offer experiences, right? So in addition to, so there's a film, also another a colleague of mine, a good friend of mine, Nancy Schwartzman, is working on a film project called Roll Red Roll, which will be coming out probably in 2016, maybe 2017, but she's created this augmented reality game, not interactive, a card game that you can play that helps you further kind of dig into the issues in the film. The film's about Steubenville and and sort of rape culture and how this small football town, you know, if you know the story, I've heard the story in Steubenville, where the young woman was sexually assaulted by a number of teens on the football team. It was put, you know, they put content, they were tweeting about it and posting about it and had video up online on YouTube talking about it, and the whole kind of the way that the whole community had to deal with this horrendous act that was that, you know, where everyone essentially became a victim in a way, and this card game that she's creating helps people sort of understand the different roles that you might be forced into playing when you're in this small community, dealing with dealing with such a terrible, awful, violent incident, and how you have to manage that. So it's experiential, and helps really shape more thinking around the film project itself. Rooftop Films does a lot of rooftop films. They show films during the summertime, basically drive-in films. It's awesome outside, but they do a lot of events that may not have anything directly to do with one or two films. They might program a bunch of films together with this, for instance, is a big brand store that they're partnering with, or that they did partner with, and they had several events at the store where they or they had an event at the store where they showed several short films, coupled with the launch of this SoulCycle bikes, which is kind of cool. So media content paired with other kinds of community events gives people different kinds of experiences that they can have and share with other people, which can lead to community. One thing that you can provide to people is community, is a sense of community around the content. And I think these are two examples, particularly Afropunk, which turned into a phenomenon basically, especially with this last year, Grace Jones just killing it. Many people may have forgotten that this started off as a documentary film that was made many years ago about this kind of obscure culture of black punks and their experience being inside this community, but also still feeling very alienated because of the racism inside of the community, still really loving the music and the culture and trying to find their place in it. I connect with other black people who were into punk music. It branched into a film festival and an annual concert, and has created this community online where people share stories, they share video content, there's this blog, there are other films, so it's broadened into this gigantic community that lives on and has grown way beyond, I think, what the original the original film started off with many years ago. Another example, I think a really interesting one, is Dirty Wars, and here's a film that came out the same year of Gideon's Army, 2013, at Sundance. Very serious topic about America's involvement in the Middle East and using drones to conduct war, and how essentially we shifted from a ground war into a drone war. But here's 2 years later, and because it is still such a significant issue, and we're still seeing the fallout and the effects of our time and what we're doing in the Middle East. There's still a lot of interest in this film, and here's their Facebook page. 2 years later, they've got a piece of content that they've put up. It has 101 shares, 262 people like it. They've got 11 comments on it, and the film has been long past its release. It's not on festivals. It's not doing the circuit. It's not doing any of that anymore. But there's still a community that cares a lot about the topic, is discussing it still online, and they maintain that space on Facebook for people to come together and to learn more, to understand what's still happening, to talk about the issues. And then the last piece of sort of value that you can bring is impact, right? This thing called impact that I was just talking about. Here are 3 examples of things that you can do if you want to do an impact campaign. And when we talk about impact, it's that's sort of the advocacy campaign that may address an issue. It could be professional development workshops that use the film. or a piece of media. It could be teaching modules maybe that teach history or sociology. There's a lot of stuff. Most content that goes through POV or ITVS, Indie Lens, a lot of that stuff have discussion guides. They are made available through public media's programming that's given to teachers to teach with the media content and discussion guides to help talk through that stuff. So here's some examples. The Model Alliance was an organization that partnered and worked with the film Girl Model. That was focused on the fact that, you know, they have these very, very young girls who were working extremely long hours as models. It was they're, you know, essentially being exploited, and they were able to pass a law in the state of New York to protect these young girls from exploitation. And they used the film to be able to publicize what was happening and to put pressure on the state legislature to pass a law. Promise Tracker, we talked about American Promise earlier. This is an app that they developed that helps parents and their children work together to help keep the kid focused and in school, and to provide the support that they need to be able to be successful. And this last piece, also another education-related thing, is the Bully Project. And these are tools and resources you can see listed for educators, for students. This is all around bullying. That was a hugely successful and still ongoing film campaign. I think the film came out, I want to say in 2012, and is still going strong. So those are sort of some key areas, key 4 areas of how you can provide value to your audiences. So how do you build your audience? So once you've identified a few profiles, right, that might be, you know, a target audience, secondary audience, niche, or core, and you've identified what value you might be able to provide to them, you kind of have to, or you would want to test out some of your assumptions, right? Before you get out the gate and you put your film out there and you think this is going to be the you know, these people, this 35-year-old mother, single mother who lives, you know, who might be middle class and works as a teacher, that's my core audience, or that's my niche or my target audience. That's the person who's really going to want to see my film or my media, and I'm going to get them. I'm going to help them build community. I know I'm going to offer them XXX. Before you go through all of that, you should probably try testing out some of those assumptions, right? And you can do that kind of with two ways. That you could either do it on the cheap, or you can spend, you know, plenty of money doing. But either way, you should try to do that before you release your project out into the world. So digital engagement, I think that's pretty simple. You can take clips of your content. You could take trailers and publish them and post them and share them in the spaces where your target audience is having conversation, and get feedback. See what people think. Engage people who may have access to the audiences that you think you want to reach, and encourage them to share your content or to test out some of your messaging and see where that gets you. If people are responding well, if people you know, aren't responding well, if people seem to be interested and can't wait to see more, those are the kinds of things that can help you kind of figure that out. And you look at somebody like, arguably somebody like Issa Rae with you know, Awkward Black Girl. She kind of was testing out some of her humor and some of her approach, and seeing where what the interest was, who our audience was, and was able to sort of do some proof of concept and then get picked up by HBO to produce something a little bit more higher quality and go that route. So I'm not saying that's necessarily what you're trying to do, but it's just an example of how you can be in the digital sphere, sort of playing with some stuff to see who's interested. Focus groups. So I kind of talked a little bit about this, about online communities, but screenings. That's probably a really good idea to do a couple of focus group screenings. If it's not the whole film, maybe even 20 minutes of it. And it could just be at your house with a group of people, or if you are working with an artist services organization or have support from NBPC, or or support from IFP, or maybe even Tribeca, or your local film school or something. See if it's possible to screen some or all of your content and get feedback from a group of people and see what makes sense. Test out some of your messaging. Test out, whether you think that the film is going to be of interest to the people you believe you want it to be of interest to your target audience. The people who've crowdfunded you, right? If you have a Kickstarter campaign, that's another opportunity where you could be showing bits of content, and you might have already done some of that when you've created your crowdfunding campaign in the first place. But you might want to pull some folks from there who have contributed money or contributed larger sums of money, and share a little private link with them of some of your content and get some feedback. Those people might be considered your core audience, right? Your biggest fans. You wanna keep them in your court and see if you feel like you're in the right, if you're going the right direction. Stakeholder brain trust. Now those are really focus groups that are geared toward impact campaigns, right? So when you are in the process of designing your messaging and really thinking through what's my strategy, or what's the thing I'm trying to do, what am I trying to change? Is this an advocacy campaign? Is there some kind of law, or is there some kind of policy or procedure I'm trying to push for, or some kind of corporate change that I'm trying to push for? It's really important to pull stakeholders in to help you think through whether that stuff's even possible, if it's important, if it's something you should be doing, or maybe you need to focus on more civic engagement or civic dialogues. So those kind of stakeholder brain trusts will help you understand who's really the audience for that kind of impact strategy, if it's going to work or not, if it's going to be helpful to people, or if it might be at odds with what activists or movement builders or people are out in the world trying to do currently. So connecting your content with your audience. Now that you've kind of gone through that process, you've done your audience profile, you've done your impact strategy, you've done, then kind of thought through what's the potential value that I'm going to be bringing to people, to those audiences that I think are my targets or my niche. And I've done a little bit of that focus group testing. I've really thought through, and I've gotten that feedback from people. Now you've got to devise a strategy that meets them where they are, right? That combines traditional media with social media, with partnerships, with distribution. So traditional media, right, meaning maybe it's newspaper clippings, newspaper or radio or television if it's a big, if it's kind of a bigger film, and you have the support from a broadcaster and are able to get in those kinds of spaces. social media, obviously, I think that's no matter what kind of project or how well funded it is, whether it's a big campaign or if it's a like a Gideon's Army, or if it's a smaller grassroots thing that has maybe only has digital distribution, or maybe it's only kind of grassroots or non-commercial kind of community screenings. Social media is going to be key for any of those instances. Partnerships are also really critically important. So it's your organizational partnerships. If you are more of a social issue doc or something to that in that kind of space, organizational partnerships are critical. Those are the people that are talking to their membership, talking to their constituents, building your content into the work that they're doing and getting it out there. Also, influencers, bloggers or kind of cultural tastemakers or people like that. Some of the higher level stuff, or the big sort of heavily marketed stuff might lend on celebrities, but you don't have to do that. Influencers come in all sorts of levels and spaces, and so it's understanding who those people are to your community that you're trying to target, your audience that you're trying to target. And then your distribution platforms. You've got to choose the right distribution platform for your target audience. So I'll give an example. If you are, so let's say you are, it's really important for you, your target audience is maybe working class people. Maybe you've done a film on labor, on there's a film out called The Hand That Feeds. Maybe you're trying to connect with other movements and other people who are fighting for the minimum wage in their community. You probably wouldn't want your only distribution to be on something like HBO or some other cable service, subscription service that's really expensive. Those folks obviously are not making a ton of money. That's the point. So you'd want to come up with distribution platforms that are accessible to that audience. If that's your core, if that's your target audience, if you're trying to put that kind of film in their hands, you want to find the distribution platforms that actually are available to them that they'd most likely use. So I want to share this slide image, which I think is really critically important, and you could do a whole webinar or two just on this alone. But and I think there are a couple of things in here. I don't know that educational distribution is as well. Sort of institutional educational distribution in the university or public library space is as well represented here. But I think that this is a really, really this is a really good kind of current look at the digital, the internet, physical, theatrical, television, sort of the space right now, and what the different potential platforms are to get your stuff out there. So again, it's figuring out what's the right actual platform to connect. To make your content accessible on for the audience that you're trying to reach. And just a couple of things to look at, some further reading. The first two are on POV's documentary blog. I think they're from Edward J. Delaney. They're from 2011. So it's a slightly older, but it's still actually really still very meaningful. I think everything he says in these two pieces are still useful. And then John Reese, a friend and a colleague of mine, wrote the book Think Outside the Box Office, which is a few years old now, but still really kind of, it lays out how to think about a step-by-step process for if you're an independent filmmaker and trying to think through who your core audience, secondary audience is, and how to pick the right kinds of distribution platforms. He talks a lot through the book about rights and how to think about how to window and selling your rights to the right kinds of distributors, and there are case studies in there. So yes, it costs some money, but I think it's actually, if you haven't heard of the book, it's a really worthwhile investment, because I think it really helps. It can really help you think through in really specific detail, with case study detail, on how to get your content out there. So I think that's, we've got about 15 minutes, right, Cassandra? I think that's the...
Yep.
If people have
Great.
questions?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Jennifer. So we're going to be taking some questions, and if audience members, please feel free to type your questions into the chat box below if you have them, and we'll give some of those to Jennifer to answer. And just to start out, I know we had a question about tracking impact. So Jennifer, can you talk a little bit more about the methods for measuring impact if your project doesn't have like a visible goal, like passing legislation? Could you speak to that?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is, don't say you're measuring impact. I try to avoid using that term altogether, and talk about evaluating or assessing. So I'm going to refer back to BritDoc again. This relaunching of their impact field guide, which has a whole section. In fact, I'm going to do this. Now you're going to see my my scrappy. Ooh, my goodness! There's so much junk on my desktop. Don't look. I'm going to pull up something for you to show you, to speak to this a little bit. All right. So, can you all see this?
Okay, we're seeing your desktop right now. Is that what we should be seeing?
Yeah, are you seeing this thing that says BritDoc
Yes.
Impact Field Guide?
Yep.
Okay. So they have an interesting framework, I think, which I think applies to quite a lot of things, but I think there's some there's some other stuff around participatory documentary or participatory media making and things like that are slightly different frameworks that you'd want to look for, or interactive, that you'd want to look for different metrics or assessment tools. But I think these are really helpful. This changing minds one, these kinds of indicators here, when they talk about changing minds, I think that's really thinking through, like, what are the indicators for a public awareness campaign? So, how do you understand if you've decided, for instance, that you want to reframe an issue, or you want to raise awareness about something that is happening but people may not know about. There are ways, if you look through this changing minds section here, that can help you come up with techniques or tools that can measure some indicators, or show some indicators of how your project has sort of entered into the public discourse, the public dialogue, in a certain kind of way. I would say that the biggest thing is, I think it's very difficult to it's contribution versus attribution. Let me put it that way. And the main reason why so many people focus on, I think, things like changing laws or changing corporate policy is because those things are pretty, not easy to do, but they're easy to show, right? So they're really clear. It's attribution, right? Look, when the Bully Project, for instance, that I pointed to, there was the film was screened in the White House, and Lee Hirsch, the director, has got a video clip of President Obama saying, "I just saw the film Bully by the director Lee Hirsch." I mean, it's so that's a really clear case of that film having a politician actually speaking to it and saying it. So I think that's part of the reason why there's such an emphasis on that, because it's easy to show. It may not be easy to do, but it's easy to show. This other stuff, like understanding how your messaging or your media enters into the public culture and the dialogue and shifts culture, or shifts the way a culture kind of thinks about or talks about an issue, is a lot more difficult to do. But there are these things here that you can employ that might help you do that. So surveying, obviously, looking at press articles, if there's a particular, and again, this is tied to strategy, you have to be very strategic about it, and you need to benchmark. You need to start from, I know that this issue or this thing that I'm talking about, that I want to make a movie about or make a film about, the way that people talk about it, they use language like X. And now I'm going to introduce new language into the lexicon through this film, and over time, I'm going to see if the people now start to talk about it in the way that I framed it, right? And you can track, and you have to pick a very particular kind of language and framing and use that repeatedly, and put that out into the world and see if that is the thing that gets taken up. So it's not so much. Yes, it's important, and there are tools to measure. But the more important thing is developing a strategy and benchmarking so that you can actually show how your film or media has contributed to how something has shifted. I don't know if that helps or makes sense.
Definitely. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay.
And I see we have a question from Lillian. So she's asking, can you give an example of a project you may have done with a primary and secondary audience, and how did you define and target those?
Sure. Okay. So there's a film called Traces of the Trade that I worked on. And it was about the largest slave trading family, the descendants of the largest slave trading family in U.S. history, and they went around and retraced the steps of the triangle trade that their ancestors had traversed, and they looked at documents and sort of tried to understand, their lives, what the implications were, the fact that they came from this legacy. And one of the things that they really were pushing for was reparations, and thinking through how do we talk, what do reparations look like, and how do we encourage institutions that have a history of being involved deeply in the slave trade, and in slavery, and that's, you know, most institutions in some way, in some kind of way in American society that have been around long enough are implicated in some kind of way in the economy of slavery. But they really focused in on the Episcopal Church and the Unitarian Church, and what we ended up doing, and trying to get those, trying to get them to start the process of reconciliation and repair by first owning up to the fact that they were complicit and involved in supporting the slave trade and bringing slaves over here, and apologizing, first starting the process of reconciliation and repair for acknowledging their role in it and apologizing for that role. And so what we ended up doing is working closely with people, you know, people who were in the parish, people who really cared about this issue, to create tools and resources to discuss and talk about it, to make it something that people felt comfortable talking about. There are quite a few people who were themselves the descendants of slave traders, and had a really hard time addressing the issue. So we gave them an opening and a way to talk about it, and to then put pressure on the leadership of the Episcopal Church to admit to their role in the slave trade and to issue a formal apology through their system. So, you know, the primary target was the leadership of the church, and the secondary target was the parishioners, were the people who attended the church.